everyone. It's great to see such a big crowd of people interested in such an ancient and multicultural instrument. Before we get started today, I'd like to introduce myself and tell a little bit about our foundation and our company and how I got involved with the ocarina. First of all, there are two pronunciations of the word ocarina or ocarina. I tend to use them interchangeably. They're both correct. So if you hear either one, they're both fine. Before we get started, I'd like to say just that I am really passionate about music education. I've been a music educator for over 12 years, and 12 of those years were running a Suzuki music school. 9 of those were running the St. Louis School of Music. I'm deeply passionate about the fact that every child deserves a music education, regardless of their socioeconomic status. It's not just a privilege for the wealthy, and it's not just an extracurricular. The problem is, and what I saw in my own Suzuki studio and the studios around me, is that there's not a lot of diversity. Most of the studios serve the affluent, not because we want to, but because they're the ones that can pay. And this was a problem that disturbed us. And when we discovered the ocarina, we realized this is a potential solution to the problem, because there's not any cost in maintenance. There's not, yes?
I can hear you because I'm sitting here. Can you all hear?
No. All right, I will just,
You may have to hold it to your
use my teacher's voice, yes.
Just hold it to your mouth.
You could hold it to your mouth.
I could do that. Okay, you guys can all hear me now?
Yes.
All right, good. So as I was saying, we're really passionate about every child having the chance, regardless of their income level, to be able to play music. It's just an absolute need for everyone to have music in their life. We all know, as teachers, the good that it does for society and the individual. So when we came across this instrument, we realized that it had the potential to help alleviate this problem of the disparity between those who have music and those who do not. So that's how we got started with it. We initially started off with the St. Louis STL Ocarina, just in sales, and we realized that there was more of a need to reach teachers, and so we started Evergreen Music Foundation. And what that does is, for schools that don't have funding to have an instrumental music program, we provide free instruments and free resources. So if that's a situation that you are currently in, you can go downstairs and sign your name on the list, and we'll be in touch with you about how to get involved with that. That list will also give you information on our educational pricing as well, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. One of the things that we found with the ocarina is that it's more easily learned. A lot of students, and you may have come across this in your programs, a lot of students are turned off by the difficulty of music and they think, I can't do this. And our basic philosophy is that every child can play music. I come from a Suzuki background, and that was ingrained in me at a young age, that it's for everyone and everyone can do it. And one of the things we've found in our experience is that people have come up to us at conventions who said, I don't play music, I could never do it. And we teach them a little bit and they discover they can. And sometimes they come back the next year playing music. And so we've been really grateful to see these limitations falling away through such a simple instrument. Students also find it really engaging and relatable, and I'll talk more about why a little bit later. Through our efforts at both our STL Ocarina store and our foundation, we continue to develop new instruments. If you go on our website, which I'll put up in a little bit, in fact, I'll do that now. Can you see that? A little blurry?
I like the green.
Oh, it's a little green. Oh, I'll put it up again at the end. You can come up and just take notes if you'd like. So through our efforts there, we have new ocarinas all the time that we're developing that are beautiful and appealing to children, beautiful colors. We have new educational materials always coming out, music albums, sheet music, lesson plans, and we also offer teacher training for teachers that feel like they'd like feedback on how to incorporate this into their course, into their class. So here's a brief summary of what we're going to do today. First of all, I'm going to give you a little bit of the rich history of this instrument. It's thousands of years old, and it really has a neat history. So I'll give you a brief overview of that. We'll talk a little bit about what ocarinas are like today. I will also talk about why we think the 12-hole ocarina is such a good choice for the classroom. And then I'll discuss some of our educational materials that we have to offer. And then we'll learn to play. And those of you that have instruments, you'll be my guinea pigs today. So if you don't want to be a guinea pig, please give away your instrument. And if you do want to be a guinea pig and you don't have them, we do have them for sale downstairs. Okay, so the history of the ocarina. As I mentioned, it's thousands of years old. We believe it might even be something like 12,000 years old. We know that various cultures throughout the world had the instruments. Mayans, Aztecs, the Incans all had ocarinas and ocarina-like instruments. The Chinese also had an ocarina-like instrument called the zun. And you can see that right here. It's kind of a round egg-shaped instrument. These ones are not thousands of years old, but they're in very good condition, so you can get a sense of what they would have been like in their day. While we don't know exactly how these instruments were used, we do know that from the care with which they were made, they were definitely not just toys. They had a real purpose. We think that maybe they were used in rituals, possibly sacrifices, and because some people have been buried with them, maybe aiding the dead in the afterlife. The ocarina did eventually make its way over to Europe. The way that it did that was that when the Spanish went over to Middle America, Hernan Cortez sent a group of Aztecs back to Europe in 1527 to play for Charles V. Popularity just spread. Everybody was up in arms about it. It eventually made its way over to Italy, and in the mid-19th century, Giuseppe Donati made his first ocarina, a 10-hole ocarina, and it is considered the modern precursor to today's ocarina that you see now. In fact, in Italy today, they're still being made this way with that interesting shape at the end. So if you see that, that's an Italian-style instrument. Those are always the 10-hole instruments. The Italians never took to the 12-hole system that we use here. He set up a shop in Budrio, Italy, and started making these instruments, and people were buying them. He set up also a group, which I'll butcher the name because I don't speak Italian, but it's Gruppo Ocarinistico Budrese. And they performed throughout Europe, and so the popularity just blossomed from there. He called it ocarina, which I believe in Italian is pronounced ocarina, but if any of you speak Italian, you can correct me on this. And it means little goose, because if you look at it, it looks a little bit like a goose without a head. It's a little disturbing. So today, oh yes, that's the Japanese one there. Today, instruments are 12-hole, and that all began with the Japanese makers. They originated the 12-hole system, which they based off of a Chinese zun. I'm not sure that I see the relation between the two, but that was their inspiration. Initially, the 2 extra holes were not useful holes. They were really just there for tuning. And when we were working with makers, we said, well, these extra notes aren't very in tune. Can you do something about that? And they said they're not supposed to be extra notes. So we worked with them to develop a couple extra notes so we can go below middle C now for a C major. But initially it was just meant for tuning. So they made those, and then later on in the First and Second World Wars, these instruments here, made of metal, were given out to soldiers in the United States Army. It was supposed to boost morale, and they could play songs from home and just remember a little bit of home life. They nicknamed them sweet potatoes, and as you have probably heard that term before, they look a little bit like a sweet potato. So if you hear that term, that's what this is talking about. They were real popular back in the 30s and 40s, but they did eventually fall out of favor because the recorder started taking over, especially in educational circles. And we all have mixed feelings. Some of us love the recorder, some of us don't. But it is what it is. So the ocarina got eclipsed by the recorder. But all of that changed in the 1980s thanks to a video game, Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. Because of this game, the ocarina has made a real resurgence in popular culture. And thanks to that, we have found that a lot of people who are not at all interested in music have become interested in music. Some of them have actually become quite good musicians. So that's very exciting for us. So in America and in Western culture, this game has brought the instrument to public attention. Meanwhile, in Asia, it's been a big fad over there, thanks in part to this man, Sujiro, who is a famous ocarina performer, and he writes his own music, and he performs throughout Asia. So places like Japan, Taiwan, and Korea all are enjoying a great deal of ocarina playing. Okay, so the modern day ocarina today has a lot of variety. As you notice, you have a lot of different colors. They come in various sizes and shapes. Some of them are cute. Some of them are more functional, but there's a huge variety, and the possibilities are endless. But there are three main categories that you can use to distinguish the instruments. First of all, the number of holes is going to change the range of your notes. If you have more holes, more notes. Secondly, the instrument's material is going to change the way the instrument reacts. For example, plastic is an excellent choice for your classroom. You all know why, of course. And it's going to be a pretty good sound. We've made sure that plastics today are very high quality, so you're not going to get any of that nasty squeakiness going on. The best sounding ones are going to be the ceramic ones. Those have a little bit warmer sound and a quicker response. So students who really take to it and become more advanced, if you get students in high school or junior high, then they start to move into these breakable instruments once they've learned how to control themselves and not break their instrument. The last thing, of course, is the size. The size also changes the range of the instrument. Your tiniest ones, like this little necklace, which is very cute, is going to be very high. It's going to be like a sopranino or a soprano, and it tends to suit very well for Celtic music and things like that. Whereas our biggest one,
Whoa.
that's the world's biggest right there. It's really, really low. We do actually, if you Google it, it will come up, and we do have some videos of this being played. Just look up world's biggest ocarina, and it's there. I think it's in a playing group, like a quartet. Okay, so here are a few of the varieties that, some of these we have downstairs, some of them we don't. As you'll notice, this one here is a triple. It actually has 3 octaves and 3 different chambers. You can do chords with yourself. You can play some very, very complicated music. One of the things that we've done to try and raise the interest in ocarina is to commission works. So we've had works for triple ocarina performed with major symphonies, and like the Washington Chamber Symphony played some of the works we've commissioned. And a lot of things like Vivaldi and things like that can be played on that. So it's not just hot cross buns. There's a big range of what you can do with your students. Probably hot cross buns for a while, though, I would think. We also have the 6-hole. This is quite useful for the youngest children. So if you work with, maybe 5 or 6-year-olds, they're going to want to work with this because, as you know, their fine motor control of those little fingers is very challenging to work with. So these are best to start with when they're youngest. We've also had for handicapped children who maybe don't have use of their lower fingers or of all of their fingers, this we have found to be a very good solution. And students with mental disabilities too, this tends to be a good choice for them. It's tuned the same as the other ones. I will take questions at the end. I'll definitely save some time. It's tuned the same, so you don't necessarily have to have all the kids on the same type. As long as they're in the same key, that's all that you need. As you can see, we also have some very pretty ones there as well. But we'll move on. So, why do we think the 12-hole is the best choice, with the exception of what I mentioned for the 6-hole, the uses for that? First of all, and the main one is it's very affordable. We really want for teachers to not have to break the bank and spend all of their resources on this one instrument. So we keep the costs down, but it's without sacrificing quality. As a Suzuki violin teacher, I would have students bring in these horrible instruments from China. And I would always tell them, and they'd be so excited, I got this for $25. And we would spend the whole lesson tuning it. And that was horrible. So we don't want you to have the same experience with your ocarinas. So it won't sacrifice quality. We also find that students find it very engaging. Some of you who have been around students, they're just drawn, or been around students within ocarina, they're just drawn to it. And they're like, what is that? So it's definitely a great way to get kids that are maybe not engaged in music to engage. And as I mentioned before, those of the students that play Zelda, that's an extra point of relation there for them. Because of our use of pop culture, we've been able to reach a lot of people, and they've all found that they're capable. So if you go away with nothing else today, I want you to go away with the fact that all the kids can discover their capability with this instrument and feel confident that they can play music and that they want to play music. It really is natural for all of us to want to play music. It's easier to learn than most other instruments. The learning curve is quite shallow, so students get the feeling of playing music fairly quickly rather than struggling through months of trying to get a good sound or the right posture. They get to experience music much earlier, which allows you to get into musical concepts and theory and the fun stuff, rather than stand up straight and fix your wrist and all the things that we don't enjoy quite as much as music. The ocarina is very small and easily transportable, which as teachers, it's wonderful to be able to fit it all in a small box in the corner of your room and not have piles of stuff around your room. It's also linear in its finger pattern, which is great for those of you who have band programs that you're feeding into. It really helps them be ready for that. However, it does not have the difficulties of embouchure that a lot of band instruments have. So they're not going to be struggling for weeks and weeks trying to figure out how to get a note. When I was in 4th grade, I did a little bit of flute. It was my tiny bit of woodwind experience. And I found it very frustrating that after 3 weeks, I still could not play anything. I had to keep trying, and eventually I got it. But I wanted to be able to make music right away. And that's the beauty of this instrument, is they can play music so much quicker. The last thing, and one of my favorite things, is the fact that with its rich history and its multicultural background, there's a lot of opportunity for cross-curriculum teaching. If they're studying the Mayans with their teacher, you can be playing some Mayan music. Or if they're studying something about Chinese culture, you can be bringing in Chinese music. So it's really a great way to help them make these connections and make it more relatable to them and more their own. And that's really how they learn, is when they're making these connections. So it's a great opportunity for that. So even though it's easier to play than most other instruments, we still want to be methodical in how we teach. Being teachers, we're all about that, right? We don't want to just kind of fumble our way through. So with that in mind, I wrote some method books, these 3 books here, to try and take both students in a class situation and individuals through in a step-by-step progressive way. Coming from a Suzuki background, I did base some of the process from my own experience without limiting it to the confines of Suzuki. Because of that, it mostly uses repertoire pieces to teach the skills needed. There are some exercises, but as you know, students are not, yay, I'm going to do exercises now. So we tried to keep that to a minimum. It teaches music reading. All three of them work with music reading. And it also teaches all the techniques that you need, not just this finger goes here, but what do you need to get a good sound? What do you need to make sure you're not dropping the instrument? We cover all of that information. They also include demonstration CDs that you can play for your class so they can hear the music, how it's supposed to sound. That helps them, of course, with their learning their oral skills and just being able to differentiate as well. So, method 1, that's this one here. This is for 12-hole, which is what I think all of you have, 12-hole. It's 12-hole C major. You could use it with another key, just knowing that you would be transposing. But we designed it to be with C major instrument. It teaches how to read music, and it includes a variety of folk and classical music. Method 2, this is going to be our more advanced course of study for students that already know a fair amount about how to play and have completed the first book. It teaches how to play the double chamber ocarina, which, like I showed you with the triple, has 3 different holes to blow into and a wide range of notes. So it teaches that. And then the third method book there is going to be for 6-hole ocarina. That one is geared more towards younger kids, so it's a little more cutesy. It's got little bugs and things like that and color coding. But it's a great one to work with your younger students. We originally intended that these would just be for individuals and homeschool families, but we have found that these can be easily adapted to your classroom situation. However, that does take a little bit of planning on your part. So we saw the need to create classroom-specific materials. And so we created 2 books with that in mind. The first one, I did not name this, so forgive the pun, Ocarina Fundamentals. This is it's a little blurry, but this is a page from it. It includes teacher lesson plans. So really all the planning is taken out for you. You can do as much planning as you'd like, or you can just follow strictly. It's got all of that for you. Each lesson, there's 10 lessons in the books. Each lesson is meant to be about 3 to 5 sessions. So it can take you through a year of study. You could breeze through more quickly, but you won't have as good results with that. So we have color-coded notes there. Each of the notes has a different color. So for example, D is, I think, blue, and it just gives students an extra bit of information to try and process the notes when they're learning to read music. And we match all the fingerings to that, as you can see. We also used colors for the fingers. Some of the teachers that we've worked with actually put little colors on their fingers to help the kids match. Some kids need that, some kids don't. But it's just a great way to help them know, am I covering the right holes? Because sometimes that can be a little tricky. As you look at it, it might look a little intimidating seeing all those holes there. So this is one of the solutions we've come up with. It also includes some opportunities for student creativity. This is one example. We have students experiencing different intervals, and as you can see, we've got these different faces: happy, sad, angry, surprised. They could draw in their own. But as they play these intervals, we've got, a major second there, they can put in, how does that make them feel? So they're starting to experience the difference between consonants and dissonance and these different intervals and defining it for themselves. So we try to keep that in there. Everything in this program is based on national standards. So you won't have to supplement to make sure that you're meeting your state's national standards. The nice thing about this program is it's free. Any of you that want to start a program in your school, if you get in touch with us about the educational pricing that we have, we provide this free with the instruments that you buy. And there's no limit or no base level that you have to buy in order to get this. It's not actually in book form. I do have it in book form here if you want to look at it afterwards, but it's actually online. We send it to you so you can print as much as you want, and just as many copies as you need. You can give out to your students, and it also includes videos, multimedia, all kinds of things you can use with the technology in your classroom if you have that. So I'll have that up here. If you want to come by afterwards to look at that, you're welcome to. I also have the other method books. You can check those out as well up here afterwards. Now our next book is Ocarina Explorer. This is a more expansive program, and it really expands on the multicultural aspect of the instrument. I have that up here as well. The fun thing about this is it's got a little passport in the back, and you can print these for your students. Oops, yes, there it is. That's the passport there. And on the back, it's got each country that we visit. And there's little stickers in the back of the book, and you could use any stickers you want. But there's little stickers as they complete each section. You know, the section on France, as they pass that, they get a sticker or a stamp in their passport. So they visited all these countries. The book teaches a little bit about the countries, and then music, of course, from each one. We've got music from France, England, Germany, Ireland, Russia, Africa, India, Turkey, Japan, South Korea, Australia, Peru, Colombia, Mexico, Jamaica, Canada, and of course, good old USA. So there's a wide range of music there. It teaches how to read music, and of course, all the basics that Ocarina Fundamentals teaches as well. It basically is meant to give students a varied musical diet. So much of what we do today is just the same folk songs, and students get a little bored with that. So we wanted to give a little bit of newness to what they're doing and something different. So our goals for these books that we wrote, we wanted to make sure that every student could successfully learn the instrument. That's the number one thing. Every student, 100%, can do it. We wanted them comfortable playing both solo and in an ensemble. We wanted them to be comfortable reading music. We wanted them to enjoy the process of making music. We didn't want them to think, gosh, I have to do Ocarina now. We wanted them to really own it and love it, and to feel capable. We wanted them to grow in their discipline, their performance etiquette, and their musical literacy. And of course, as I mentioned before, we want it to be affordable for the schools and for the families. Okay, I've talked enough. You're ready to play, I think, right? Okay. So the first thing you're going to want to do, if you haven't already, put on your neck straps. That's the first thing you tell your students. Put on your neck straps. They do come with neck straps. Eventually, as they play longer, the neck straps become unneeded once they learn the techniques involved in supporting. But until they do, the neck strap is a wonderful thing to have. Now, the first thing you're going to do is show me your left hand. Show me your left hand. Okay, your left hand is going to face you and go under the instrument. Now, show me your right hand. It's going to face away and go over the top of the instrument. The biggest problem that I see with adults and children is that they don't properly cover the holes. Those of us who are string players, I talked with one of you the other night about this, we like to use our fingertips. And that will not work with an ocarina. You need to make sure you use the fattest part of your finger, the fleshy part, because that's going to create a really nice seal. If a student is making a pretty horrible noise, about 80% of the time, that is the problem. They are not covering the holes sufficiently. So when you put your fingers on, make sure you don't see any space there at all. And then you want to add just a little bit of pressure, not so much that your hand feels tight, but just a little bit of pressure to make sure that there's a good seal there. So that's the first thing I cover with students, is just to make sure they've got that. After that, you can try a little bit of tapping, particularly the pinky on the right hand. A lot of people find that is a difficult finger to move, the pinky and also the ring finger. And so you can try that a little bit now, just do some taps. If you listen, it makes a cool sound. Kids will enjoy that, probably. They might do it and annoy you. Another finger that you can tap, and we probably won't get this far today, but another finger you can tap is the ring finger on your left hand. The reason for that is that we don't lift the pinky on the left hand. That is there to support the instrument for the first octave. It comes off later, but that's much more advanced. So for today, that pinky on your left hand, swear not to take it off. I will leave my pinky on. So that's another finger that you can tap. This is a little challenging for students to be able to tap that finger. So the first thing I start with is just some taps. You can do that however you'd like. If you want to do it in rhythm or just randomly, it's fine. The next thing we cover is how to blow. And you want to start with articulation. How many of you here are woodwind players? Quite a few. Okay, so you guys know how to do this already. The rest of us don't, but that's okay. We start with the consonant tu, tu, tu. And you want to blow very lightly. This is not like playing flute where you need a lot of support. It's very light. So I'm going to have you hold your hand in front of your mouth and just, and you can do it silently. And it should feel almost just a little bit more than just breathing. The main things to keep in mind here is we don't want to puff out the cheek because that's going to get a very unfocused sound. And we also don't want to have a very wide hole. We want to keep it kind of tight, almost like you're whistling. And that's going to also create a really nice focused bit of air into the instrument. Okay, so let's play some notes. Everybody cover all the notes. That is the note C that we have here, middle C. I believe all of you have C major. I hope that's true. Okay, so let's just give it a go. We're not going to be together, that's fine. We'll just take a minute to play C. Yes, oh, thank you. So the subholes that I mentioned earlier that were originally not meant to be functional, we're not covering those right now. Those eventually give us additional notes below C. We're not going to be covering those today. You're welcome to fiddle around with those a little bit later. And your students won't be doing those either. Those are a little trickier. They require less air. And so those are not usually covered until a little bit later with your students. Okay, so now we're going to be playing the note D. So everybody pick up your pinky on your right hand. Okay, now let's play C, D, C again, D. Okay, now just do it as fast as you can for fun. It'll be total chaos. Here we go. Wait, stop. And that's, you can kind of get some fun stuff going on with kids, and you might need a blowhorn or something to get them to stop. Okay, next we'll do the note E, so we're taking off ring finger and pinky. Okay, let's go ahead and play all three notes. C, D, E. Here we go. And let's do that again. Ready? Go. I like that bass in there. That's nice. Where's the bass? There it is. Nice. Awesome job. Our own bass player. Okay. And that's actually something you can do in your class too. If you want to have different ranges, we usually keep it all the same range, but if you want to have some fun with different ranges, that can be really fun. Okay. We've got F and G next. So F, we're taking off 3 fingers now. Okay, and of course in your classroom, they're not all going to be so wonderful as you, and they're not going to match, and that's okay. What we do is we just spend a little bit of time sitting with the notes, and I find, at least especially in my violin studio, we did a lot of this where you just stay on a note and it becomes very zen, and they do come together. The problems you run into are when you're kind of in a hurry to try and get them to match, and we got to move on to the next thing. It's okay for them to just sit on a note for a while and feel that zen feeling for a bit. So that's one of the things that I do when I find that matching is not happening. We won't have that problem today, though. So now we've got G. Let's try G. Okay, so we're going to play all the notes starting with C. Ready? And. Let's do that 5 times and then we're going to play a song. I'll teach you a song. No Mary Had a Little Lamb today. Okay, so I don't know if you guys can you read this okay from where you are? Okay, so we're starting on E. Let's go ahead and just try the first 2 bars together. About da 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 da, about that tempo. Ready? Go. Okay, you guys are really good. I think we'll just play it. I don't know. This is so much easier than children. Maybe you could try to be a little bit worse. Make it harder. Okay, let's go ahead and just do that, the whole first line. Ready? Go. And then on to the next piece. Ready? Go. Group playing. The group that I mentioned to you before that I cannot pronounce right now, if you look up Budrio Italy Ocarina, it's going to pop up. They've got some beautiful renditions of things like the Four Seasons, and they've even got Take 5, which is kind of cool. So if you look that up, if you want to hear the possibilities, that's on there. And then we also have some videos that we've done that are kind of movie type things that feature the ocarina. So if you're interested in hearing the possibilities, go on YouTube and just Google STL Ocarina or Budrio Italy, and you'll see some cool stuff. All right, next, does anybody want to play it again, or should we go on? Go on, okay. I'm going to teach you Zelda. You can go back to your seat. learn the second line, I will teach you how to play that top note. Does anybody want to learn to play that top note? Yeah. Okay, I'll just teach it to you. So, for that top D,